Let's go learn some Torah. Really, we lost half an hour. Parshas Noach.
Can we extend it?
You
Can we?
extend it?
No.
No, it's okay.
No, if you have to go, it's okay. I'm just kidding.
That's whatever it is. Okay. Let's begin. It says,
So Noach-
Eila told us Noach, these are the children and the generations of Noach. Noach ish tzaddik, tamim hayo b'darasov. Noach was a tzaddik, right? And he was pure, he was a leader in his generation, he walked with Hashem. So it's interesting. There's a famous Rashi. Rashi says as follows. Rashi says, it starts off, Eila told us Noach, these are the children of Noach. But it doesn't mention anything about his children. It mentions only about him. So Rashi says that to teach you, she'ikar todoseim shel tzaddikim, what is the true children of a tzaddik? Ma'asim tovim, the good deeds. Why? Very simple. A person has a good child, thank you. A person has a good child. How much is the parents responsible for the child being good?
How much?
How?
Before.
A little bit.
Too much.
I
Before.
don't know about too much, because some children are naturally good. That means just because a child has a voice, beautiful voice, do the parents get credit for his beautiful voice? No. If a child has a natural talent to play piano, does that come from the parents? Not necessarily. So the Torah says these are the children of Noah, but it doesn't mention his children right away. In the next pasuk, he mentions Shem, Ham, and Yefet. So it tells you that what can a person take credit for? Can a person go to Shamayim after 120 years and say, I deserve credit because I had a son who was a very famous person? Hashem will say, that was your son, that's not you. You can only take credit for your own actions, your Ma'asim Tovim. So the Torah says these are the children of Noach, but it doesn't go into his children right away. It goes into, first, Noach himself. Now it's an interesting Gemara. The Gemara says that when Avraham was thrown into the furnace by Nimrod, he was saved for the zchut of Yaakov. So they all said, well, Yaakov wasn't even born yet.
Yeah. Why Yaakov?
Why Yaakov? So he says, well, first of all, Avraham had to survive to have Yitzchak.
Yeah.
And then Yitzchak had to survive to have Yaakov. And then Yaakov had to survive to have the 12 Shvatim. And the 12 Shvatim had to go down to Mitzrayim to eventually accept the Torah. Because Hashem said, B'neshit bara Elokim, for the purpose of giving the Torah to the Bnei Yisrael. So Avraham, if his life would have ended at that time, it would have destroyed the whole plan of Hashem. So it was in order that Avraham should survive, b'zchut Yaakov, that Yaakov was going to be born. So they say the same thing. Noach found favor in Hashem's eyes. What was the favor? Noach had to survive. Why did he have to survive? Because he had 3 children, Shem, Ham, and Yefet. Who came from Shem? Avraham. So we needed Noach to have Shem. We needed Shem to have Avraham. So it seems that very often there's a lot of benefit to a parent because of the child that they're going to have. So even though the Ma'asim Tovim belongs to the parent, but there's a certain amount that comes from the children themselves. Okay. The Midrashim compare Noach to Moshe. I don't know if you know this. They compare Noach to Moshe. According to some opinions, Moshe was a Gilgul of Noach. Noach never davened for the people. Moshe always davened for Bnei Yisrael. Moshe was thrown into the water. Noach was in the water. Moshe was in a boat. Noach was in a boat, in the Teva. So they compared the two. And Mocheni, erase me from your book, because May Noach has the letters, the waters of Noach. So the Sifrei Kabbalah say that Moshe and Noach were very similar, and Moshe was the Gilgul of Noach. Okay. How do their lives go? Totally opposite. When we get introduced to Noach, he's an Ish Tzaddik, he's on the top of his game. After the Mabul, how does the Torah describe him? Ish Adamah, he's a farmer. Okay? Now, it's not so crazy, because the Midrashim seem to say that after the Mabul, Hashem said to Noach and his family, I'm going to start the world over with you. So they were like Adam and Chava. They might have lived forever. The ground was not cursed, so they could plant again and they produced right away. According to the Midrashim, the tree he planted, the vines, grew the same day, he made wine the same day, and he got drunk the same day. It came instantaneous. So he was on a very high level, and yet he went down to Noah. Moshe was just the opposite. When Yisro's daughter saw Moshe, how did they describe him? He's an Egyptian, Ish Mitzri. And when he ended his life, he was an Ish Elokim. So Moshe started from the bottom, ended up on top. Noach started on top, and ended up on the bottom. So they were opposites. They're like mirror images. Why do they fault Noach? What was the first thing he did when he came out of the teva?
Put the wine in it.
So everybody says the first thing he did was he started planting grapes. That's really not true, by the way. We'll see in a moment. But we understand it. If you had seen the whole world destroyed, and you came out of the teva being a whole year cooped up with all the animals, you'd need a drink also. You know? I don't know if you need wine, maybe vodka, but you'd want to drink, you'd want to get drunk. But the first thing Noach did, actually, when he came out of the teva, was he brought sacrifices to Hashem.
Oh, yeah.
He brought korbanot. Hashem was very happy with the korbanot. It says, Reach nichoach. Hashem, and then Hashem promised never to bring a mabul again. So when Noach came out of this little yeshiva called the teva, he was actually on a very high level still. Right? He was still on a very high level. Then things went downhill. So it's very interesting how they make a comparison. Let me give you a comparison. During the month of Tishrei, you have Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. How do most Jews act?
Good.
Very good. They're davening Rosh Hashanah, they're getting ready for Yom Kippur, they're doing all the mitzvahs of Sukkot, they're not eating, they try to drink Cholav Yisrael, they try to drink Pas Yisrael. They're very careful. So the month of Tishrei, everybody is extra good. What is the real test if all that good is real or fake? What's the real test? Not the month of Tishrei.
No.
Now, the month of Cheshvan. Now everything's over. Are you still good? Do you still make sure not to speak Lashon Hara? Are you still doing mitzvot? Are you still? Now is the test. That means a kid is in the yeshiva and he's a great kid. Is that a test? No. It's easy to be a good learner and sincere and a good kid in the yeshiva. It's easy.
Environment.
Right. The environment. But now he goes out into the business world. Is he an honest businessman?
Different environment.
It's a different environment. That's the test. So Hashem said, Noach, before the Mabul, everybody was so bad, he was good, I got that. In the year that he was in the Teva, on this boat, he was busy, I got that. What's the real test now? He comes out, fresh start, new world, no history. There's just Noach and his family. Is he going to be the Ish Tzaddik, leader of the generation, making everybody believe in God? Or is he going to be just a regular farmer and nobody knows his name? That was the test. How did he do on the test? Not very good. Because even though he was everybody's grandfather, that means he had Shem, Cham, and Yefet, all the children, Nimrod, Noach was Nimrod's great-great-grandfather. He was the world's grandfather. And yet Abraham maybe never even knew him. Abraham didn't discover Hashem through him. Nimrod rebelled and led everybody in rebellion, even though Noach was sitting right there. And what did Noach do? Nothing.
So Nimrod also from him, right?
Everybody.
How come they were against Abraham? And different streams of the...
Well, it was this. We're going to get to that a little bit, although we spoke about it years ago. Understand Nimrod. What did Nimrod want? What was Nimrod's plan? What was his agenda? He built this big tower, very unusual.
Against Hashem.
Let me tell you why it's unusual. If you're going to build a tower to go up to Shemayim, where do you start building it? Do you start building it in the mountains, so you're already 2 miles up? Or do you build it in the lowest part of the world? Mountains. Where did he build it? Lowest part of the world. That means, had he gone up to Mount Ararat, or he would go up to Pikes Peak, and then start building, he'd be 2 miles closer to the Shemayim.
Yeah.
But he didn't do that. He went to the lowest part of the world, Shinar, the desert, the plains, and he built a tower. And how high could the tower be? Let's figure this out. No matter how high it could be. Take the Empire State Building. If you had to go from the first floor up to the Empire State Building to the very top, there was no elevators, you could do it. You know why you could do it? Because you're climbing inside where it's protected. Imagine if you had to walk outside upstairs.
No way.
No way. Because you could fall off. And it's windy. You know, you go on the top of the Empire State Building,
windy.
it's very windy. So he built this tower to do what? For people to go up? They would never make it up. So what was his plan? What was his plan? So they say he had one plan. He said that the Mabul came because the whole world hated each other. They would steal. They would come by and say, I like that pen. It's mine. Hey, that pen cost me $10. Here's $10. Leave me alone. Right? The whole world. I was listening to the news yesterday in the car. They were interviewing someone who just wrote a book that in America today, people hate each other more than ever before.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what this book wrote, this guy wrote. Why? The reporter was asking him, what do you base this on? He says, because you have Republicans and Democrats and they hate each other. They hate each other. So because Republicans and Democrats hate each other, they're fighting literally in the streets. Every time the president does something, there's protests everywhere. And people are fighting and killing and shooting and this and that. He says, in America today, people hate each other more than ever before. You know, I find that surprising because I don't have to agree. Someone says, you know, I think it was wrong to move the embassy to Jerusalem. Okay, I think it was a good idea. You know, so we don't agree. I don't hate you. You know, but people, some people hate. But they think they're just looking for excuses. So they talk about that in America today, there's more anger and more hatred than ever before. Okay. Nimrod had a plan. Nimrod says, we're going to make a project, the Tower Project. And he brought everybody together. Everybody worked on this project. Everybody. And the whole world was working together hand in hand. And that's why they didn't get destroyed. Because Hashem said, as bad as they were, but at least they had achdus, they had unity.
They like each other.
They liked each other. Hashem changed their languages so they couldn't understand each other. When you don't understand somebody, you know, the minute there's no communication, you know, hey, it's game over. But in the beginning, they had communication. Nimrod was never going to make it up to the top, to the heaven. He was never going to throw Hashem out. But he didn't have to throw Hashem out. Because the people liked him so much, and they were all so busy, and they were all working so hard, and he was giving them everything they needed. They appointed him king. Nimrod was, it says, Gibor Tza'id. He was a powerful king. So he was popular. He was the king of the world. So he didn't need God. Because if a person needs something, they pray to Hashem. There, if a person needed something, they asked the king. Nimrod gave them whatever they needed. So Nimrod accomplished where he brought the world together, everybody was on his side, he was the king, and everybody followed whatever he said. But there was what we call a fly in the ointment. There was one person who simply made Nimrod miserable. Avraham Avinu. Why? Because Avraham Avinu was smart. He knew that if you want to get people, you have to give them one thing. Should I tell you what it is? Food. You want to give a shiur and you want people to come, give them food. If you give them free food, they come. So he gave food. Food, drinks, people came. And all of a sudden he would say to the person, hey, hold on, you got to make a bracha. He says, a bracha, what's that? It's a blessing, a thank you. Okay, thank you, Avraham, for this food. No, don't thank me. I didn't give you the food. Who gave me food? Hashem. Who's Hashem? So here he talks about the God who created the world. The king of all kings. Melech Malchei Amlachim. Well, if you're Nimrod and you want to be the king of all kings, Avraham was a problem. Okay, he was a problem. So Nimrod declared war on Avraham.
Democrat.
Right? He was a Democrat, right? You know, and he talked about, you know, sort of the midterm elections and what happened with Justice Kavanaugh and how Trump made fun of Christian Blasey Ford, you know, and Trump, you know, declared himself the winner, and he's unified the Republican Party. I mean, these are battle lines, and they're creating battles after battle. So Nimrod, he decided that Avraham needed to be killed. That was it. He was going to be put into the fiery furnace, throw him into the Kivshan Ha'esh, or Kasdim. Well, that didn't work out very well because Avraham survived. Okay? So Avraham survived. Then Hashem says to Avraham, it's time to get out of here. Now, if you were Avraham, the last thing you wanted to do was get out of there. Because you're now a hero, right? Everybody knows your name.
Popular.
You're popular.
Oh.
So Avraham said, Hashem says, Avraham, no, you got to get out. So that was a big test. That was why it was such a big test. We'll talk about that next week. When he gets out, all of a sudden there's 4 kings against the 5 kings. There's this whole war. One of the 4 kings is Nimrod. Amraphel is Nimrod. Who does he capture? He captures Lot. He attacks Sodom and captures Lot. Now, why did he do that? Because he knew if he has Lot, who's going to come rescue him? Avram. And in case Avram doesn't get the message, he sends someone to Avram to tell him, Og, right? One of his buddies. So now Avraham goes and he's going to fight to save the 5 kings. Why would Avraham save Sodom? At the end, he didn't want the people, he didn't want the money, he wanted nothing for them. He had to save Lot. Why did he save Lot? He risked his life to save Lot. Because he was family? No.
Because it was quiet.
Because it was Nimrod who had Lot. And he knew that Nimrod was making this personal. And if he didn't do it, Nimrod would never stop. So Nimrod went after Avraham on a personal level. And Avraham took care of Nimrod. Now in the end, Avraham never killed Nimrod. Because Avraham was not that type of a person. Who got so angry at the end and said, that's it, I've had enough of this Nimrod, and killed him? Esau. After Avraham died, Esau says, my grandfather was very patient with this guy Nimrod. And Nimrod had the fancy clothes from Adam Arishon and everything else. I'm sick and tired of this Nimrod. And I don't want Nimrod coming after the family. I don't want Nimrod to take his anger that he had against Abraham after my father Yitzchak. So who went after Nimrod? It said Esau was a murderer. The Medrash says, who did he kill? He killed Nimrod. Okay? I mean, and the whole world is crazy anyway. I mean, yesterday there was this Hasidic Jewish man that was beaten up.
Today, no? Oh, yesterday.
Yesterday. Why? Because he was walking down the street and the guy who beat him up thought he was driving a car, whatever. He wasn't driving a car, he was walking down the street. Today, Saudi Arabia says that the reporter that was in the embassy in Turkey probably got killed during an interrogation that went bad. But the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia are business partners with the United States. So is it our job to tell Saudi Arabia how to run their country? I don't know. Depends if the United States is a world leader or not.
Saudi Arabia said what?
There was a reporter
Yeah.
who lived in America from Saudi Arabia who wrote very much against the Saudi Arabian government.
Yeah, but he went to the Turkey.
He went to the Turkey embassy, the
Embassy.
Saudi Arabia
Saudi
embassy,
in
because
Turkey.
he wanted to get a marriage license.
Yeah. And then
He
divorce
went in
license.
and never came out.
Divorce license.
A divorce license, whatever it is. Well, he didn't need a divorce because he
His-
never walked
his,
out.
His niece or wife or whatever, she was waiting for him.
Well, somebody
And he didn't come out.
He didn't come out. There were 15 people waiting
They
for him.
destroyed the body, they said.
Whatever. So, the whole world is, you can't walk down the street without getting beat down. There's anger, there's hatred, there's politics, people are dying, countries are acting in a certain way, right or wrong. Is it our job to tell them what's right and what's wrong? It's impossible to know. But what I'm trying to tell you is this tower that Nimrod built had a lot to it that meets the eye. Okay. It says that Hashem put all the animals in this box, in this table. Also very interesting. Hashem could have saved the animals 1,000 different ways. According to some midrashim, the Mabul never affected Israel. So Hashem could have brought all the animals to Israel. And Noah could have taken care of them in the state of Israel, right? And he didn't need a box at all. Why did he put them all in the box? So the Ramban says something very interesting. And that Ramban suggested perhaps, he says, what was the whole reason? The world was exploding. Everybody was hating each other. Everybody was stealing from each other. So Hashem says, the world, everybody can live together in peace. I'll prove it to you. I can put in a little box lions and tigers and sheep and goats. And I can put them to there for a whole year. And the lion will not eat the sheep, and the goats and the snakes will not bite anybody. Everybody will survive. You put all the animals, the most docile, peaceful animals, to the most violent animals, the hyenas, all in the same box. Little boat, all on the same floor. And everybody left everybody alone. So Hashem said, I'm just trying to show you, it's possible for animals and people to live together in peace. If you want to, it's possible. It is possible. It says that he sent the Yonah out, and the Yonah came back the first time with nothing, and the second time he came back with an olive branch. So it says that he came back towards evening with the olive branch. So the Kli Yakar says, okay, I understand he came back. Why is it important that he came back towards evening? He says, because you have to understand that the Teva had no light, had a window. So during the day, you had lights. But at nighttime, what kind of lights did you have? You had to light oil. That's what they burned. So when did the Yonah come back? With an olive branch. What do you get from olives?
Oil.
Olive oil. And he came towards evening, which was perfect because they were running low of oil, so now they had light. So the Yonah came, the Pasuk says that the Yonah came towards evening to tell you that the Yonah is a bird of light. And it brought the olive branch in order for them to have light. So it was very important that it came at that particular time. We talk about, the different midrashim. He says that, at first Noach sent out the raven. Why did he send out the raven? Because the raven violated the rules of the ark. The ark says no relationship, and he had a relationship with his spouse, So the raven violated the rules. What did the raven do? He flew around and around and around. When Noach says, how come you're not doing what I said? He says, you hate me and your master hates me. Your master hates me because I'm a not kosher bird. And you hate me because you send me out. If something happens to me, what's going to happen to my kids, my species? So the Baal HaTurim says that, and the Meforshim say that the raven had another mission. Later on, hundreds of years later, the ravens would bring food to Eliyahu HaNavi, who stopped the rain during the days of Achel. Why ravens? Because ravens are cruel birds. And Hashem wanted the ravens to send a message to Eliyahu that even though I know why you're stopping the rain, but it's not good, it's cruel. So the ravens had a different mission. So the ravens said to Noach, what are you sending me out for? I have a different mission. Some Midrashim, it says, Eila told us Noach. So the Medrash says that if someone's name is mentioned twice, it means they're a tzaddik. It says Moshe. Tzaddik. But it also says Terach. So the Medrash says, because Terach did teshuvah before his end. Which is very interesting. In the end of Parshas Noach, Terach dies. The truth is he didn't die. He lived to see Yitzchak. He lived another 100 years. But they record his death because when Avraham leaves, the Torah didn't want people who read this without knowing it say, oh, look at this. What kind of a son leaves his older father? The truth is Terach went with him for a while, and then Terach did tshuva and joined him later on. So the Medrash talks about Terach being a tzaddik. Noach's name is mentioned 3 times. He had 3 righteous children. He was described in 3 different ways as being very good. But he's also a person who saw 3 worlds. The complete world, a destroyed world, and a rebuilt world. Other people saw 3 worlds. Yosef had a wonderful childhood, then he was in jail for 12 years, and then he saw a wonderful world again, and he became viceroy of Ephraim. Moshe had a wonderful childhood, and he was banished, he was in the desert, and then he led Klal Yisrael. He had Eov had a wonderful life, then a year of total devastation, and then a wonderful life back again. Mordechai had a wonderful life, the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, and then he was back again after Haman was killed. So you had many people, Moshe, Noach, Yosef, Eov, who saw 3 different worlds. The Gemara says, Tomim, actually it's Avos Rabbeinu, that Noach was complete, he was born circumcised. The Paneach Raza says 10 people were born circumcised. Let's go. Adam, Shais, Adam's 3rd child, Noach, and Noach's 3 children, Shem, Cham, and Yafet. Yaakov, which means that Yitzchak never did the mitzvah of Brit Milah. Esau wouldn't let, because he was too red, so they didn't do it right away, and Yaakov was born with the circumcision. Which one of Yaakov's children was born circumcised? Which one of Yaakov's children was most like him? Yosef. Yosef was born circumcised. The next one, she saw that he was a good child, Moshe was. And then it says Eov was born circumcised.
Whose son is Eov?
Eov lived at the same time of Avram. He wasn't Jewish, although he was married, they say, to Dinah. But he was a big tzaddik. He was a big Baal Chesed. When they talk about Eov's house, his tent, it was open on all 4 sides, just like Avram. And there's a whole book, Eov, that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote, which is a whole debate of tzaddik v'rala, why bad things happen to good people. It was the whole book of Eov. So it brings us down. Now, both Noach and Yosef are called tzaddik. Why? They both separated from Arayos, but it says more than that, they fed the world. Yosef fed the world. When you feed the world, you're called a tzaddik. And Noach was called an ish tzaddik because he fed the world. Everybody in the Teva, that was the world at that time. So he fed the world, and therefore he is called an ish tzaddik. We had the question over here, we were talking about it before. The question was, someone applies for a job, let's say in camp, And the lady says, one of the conditions to get the job is you have to know CPR. You have to have a course. You have to take a CPR course. So the guy goes ahead and takes the Red Cross CPR course, costs him $100. A week later, he gets a letter from the camp saying, thank you for your application, but we only had one job, and there were a lot of applicants, we chose somebody else. So the guy says, but I took this course, it cost me $100. He says, no one told you to take the course, we just told you need the course. So you took the course, it's good for you to have the course, it's knowledge for you. But we don't owe you $100. He says, you owe me $100. So I spent the money because I thought I was going to get the job. I never promised you the job. What does the halacha say? Doesn't get the money. No one told him that he had to do the job, and therefore he doesn't get the money. So it's very, very interesting.
He was too fast.
He worked very, very fast, and that was wonderful, and it's so good that he did that, but it's not enough to do that. At any rate, it's already 9:30, but it's interesting that Hashem, some of the people that built the tower were killed, some turned into monkeys, but it says that when there's a medrash, the medrash says that when Noach planted this vineyard, so the Sultan came to help him, and he took sheep's blood and he poured it at the base, and then he took lion's blood, then he took monkey's blood, then he took pig's blood, and he made it grow. He says that's because that's what wine does. When before you drink, you're very timid, like a sheep. You have a few cups of wine, you become like a lion, loud and boisterous. You drink a little bit more, you become like a monkey, you're foolish. And then if you drink more, you're just wallowing in the dirt like a chazir, He says wine has those properties where it can take an average normal person and reduce the person down to sometimes to their lowest levels. It just the nature of the drink itself. But Avram was successful in what he did. He got everybody, he brought people together. He was extremely popular because he gave them places to sleep and he gave them food to eat and water to drink. He says even Nimrod once came to Avram for a meal. And when he left, Avram gave him a bill, $10 million. So Nimrod said, this is a medrash, Nimrod said, I thought you did this for free. Why are you billing me? So Avram says, no, you're missing understand something. When people come to me, they want to pay me. I tell them, don't pay me, just say thank you to Hashem. So they say thank you to Hashem, that's payment. But you go around telling everybody you're God. You can't pay yourself, so I want your money. So they say that Nimrod signed a piece of paper to Avram, okay, I admit to you that I'm not God. And Avram says, okay, so you don't have to pay me. But Avram had this piece of paper, and that's what Nimrod wanted back. He wanted that piece of paper. So there are different midrashim that talk about Avraham and Nimrod that are very fascinating as to some of the things that happened.
Tell us about his brother, why he jumped also, but he burned.
Well, his brother sat on the side.
Huh?
His brother sat on the side. He said, I'm going to wait to see what happens to Avram. Only after Avraham was saved,
I go no.
his brother says, I'll go too.
So he didn't trust to Hashem.
He didn't trust Hashem. There was no leap of faith.
And I have a question. Torah doesn't say that Noach's father's or grandfather, who was his father, right? Does Torah says
Who Noach's father was? Sure.
Yeah.
Noach came from Shes through Adam's third child.
Yeah, but
And
I didn't see
Noach's wife, Naamah, came from Cain, from Lemach.
It says in the Chumash or in the...
The Chumash has no Naamah from Lemach. But Noach came from Shes. So Cain and Hevel, everything they wanted they wanted the whole world to themselves, in the end none of their children survived, except for Naamah. And then Noach started fresh, it didn't accomplish anything. From the Migdal Bavel, The nations were spread out, 70 nations were created, 70 languages were created all over the world. Have a good night, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Bringing a chaim to the Shabbat.